at Creighton Elementary School, and I've never been to yours, I am sorry, but most of the children at Creighton in the dual language program, their first language was not English. And Rosemary explained it to me that, you know, you needed a certain level, like Eric has, of English to get in after kindergarten. That was when most kids went in to it. You needed a certain level of English to get into it. But what I am seeing in the English, the immersion, Spanish language immersion program is most are English speaking to begin with. And they're coming in. They were using the dual language to really, and it was proven at least, that English was learned at a very higher level, and it was faster. The children were getting it a lot better, and their English scores went up dramatically, really fast. Like you had a regular track third grader and one in the dual language. The one in the dual language was much more proficient in writing and reading English than the regular track.
The goal in an effective dual language program, and let's talk about first grade, the goal would be at the end of first grade that those students are reading and writing in both languages at grade level. And we had the opportunity in those years that at the end of the year, and this might be something that Biltmore Prep would like to do, is bring students in, and the students, it was from Machan and from Creighton, they came to the board meeting, and actually at the end of first grade they were reading Spanish materials, they were reading English materials, and they could converse in both English and Spanish. So that's a very successful dual language program.
I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about what some of the marketing prohibitions. I assume you mean in terms of sending something home. You talked about sending something home to a parent, but for example, with formerly SBTA, now BPA, we have quite a bit of marketing that goes on kind of in the community. I don't know that it's necessarily that we're necessarily sending things home to parents saying, hey, put your kid in this program versus the other, but I'm guessing that we could still, if we wanted to, just as we are with our other bilingual school, that we could also do the same with Machan if we chose to, that we could promote it, whether it's an ad in a newspaper or just telling people about it.
There are, if you think back to the way the foreign language immersion program began at Swell Peak, it began, as my understanding, with parents expressing a very strong desire to have this kind of option. So in my observation, most of the marketing of the program built for it is parent-generated, parent-driven, and parent-facilitated. Okay. What the law does not allow is for me as the school principal to send, my understanding, to send information explicitly to Machan students and say, you should sign up for this program, this is something that we offer at our school site. At one time, when Machan's program began, there was a similar level of strong parent interest within the community that helped to drive how information was shared about the program. So that has changed, although there is still significant parent interest in student learning in Spanish at Machan School.
So, but parents...
May I add, at that time there was quite a bit of debate regarding the effectiveness of bilingual programs. It spilled over into dual language programs, and debate over the research basis for those programs. There was, and I'll just say it, there was a belief that parents were not being given all the information, and in some cases potentially being coerced, again I heard that word used, to be in these programs. And so there was a whole political aspect to it at the time that resulted in the types of prohibitions that were placed on within the law and marketing.
Okay. So how do, I guess I'm a little confused. We can how do parents know about this then? I mean, certainly there's an extent to which we
You
can
can tell
inform
them
them
about
that
the
they
program, but
exist.
you have to tell them about, you had to tell them about all of your programs and all your offerings. We had to actually even create documents that explained all of the programs and what the programs' focus were, and then basically hand that to parents.
We actually would have, the closest I think we got to explicit marketing within the school is as part of something that we would be doing ordinarily, because of course in business, we would lay out those options and say, these are language learning options at Mac, and if you'd like to know more about any of them, this is how you can find out. But parents have to request those waivers, and that's a critical piece.
Dr. Bogner, Dr. Boyle, just for my own edification, other programs that we have, such as, let's say, Junior Ambassadors, which is something that's clearly an optional program, as is foreign language immersion, do we face similar regulations from the state?
No.
Okay, thank you.
But those kinds of programs are typically, except for the travel, typically totally outside of the school.
Okay.
We're talking about.
Are there, let me ask that question again. Are there other are there other programs that we might have inside of the school where we face similar kinds of restrictions from the state that you can think of?
Not that I can think of off the top.
Other than human growth and development, perhaps. Okay. Okay, thank you.
How is, I don't know that much about Osborne District, but from whatever I know, like they have a dual language school or schools, and I don't know how that's been marketed, but in my head they have something, and I don't really think of that I think I probably know more about it than I know about Mackin, which is interesting to me. So how does our program at Mackin compare to whatever it is that they may or may not have in Osborne?
To be honest with you, I know more about Mackin's program than I know about Osborne's program. I have no idea what they do at Osborne. I know that they have a program. I think it's localized to one school site. I don't know that it crosses others, but I'm not certain, so I can't answer that.
I think the important thing is, and I could certainly check, that Osborne School District has to comply with Arizona Revised Statute, and the information that Eric is giving you is part of Arizona Revised Statute, and that became very strict once Proposition 203 happened in November 2000. And there was a little bit of flexibility as far as language levels. Districts still had some opportunity to choose one of 4 tests, and also to determine the level that would support a child being able to enroll in the Spanish, in the dual language program. But in the mid-90s, it became very restrictive with just one test, and some very high levels of performance to be able to be diagnosed as proficient. Later, the tests changed, excuse me, over the years. So we've seen 3 different tests since the mid-90s, but it's in the statute.
It wasn't so much a prohibition against marketing. It was more of a make sure that parents know all their options, and that and this was implied, not coercing parents into a particular program. It wasn't so much that you couldn't tell people about the program, but you had to tell them about all the other options as well.
Mm-hmm. And we had board study sessions. We had teams of people in the language acquisition department and here at district who worked to develop program descriptions. There were 3 different kinds of programs, and then we also had videotapes for parents when they came in to enroll. They could see what the options were, and it was a very prescriptive process of providing information for the different opportunities that students could have.
I think the infrastructure at our school is certainly there. The knowledge is there, the skill set is there. The staff, in most cases, are there to be able to have a program that's competitive with Osborne or anywhere else that's doing something like this. but for Machan, it has really been about prioritization. And you can't have this discussion without really recognizing the rigors of going through the accountability process and having all those visitations and really being under the gun to move the kids on English tests. And Don is absolutely right, President Young, absolutely right in terms of the difference between the definitions. It's really about population. Spanish is not a foreign language to most of the students at Machan. It may not be their primary language, but they're around it all the time. So that's why you have dual language. It's the opportunity to learn both ways and cultivate that biliteracy at high levels in both languages. But to do it well and meet the federal and state accountability requirements is a significant challenge. Significant challenge.
So with the, Machan's made some impressive growth in the last few years. Has that come at the expense of dual language? I mean, you talk about the challenges, so what's the give?
Well, I would say the time spent on Spanish has been part of that prioritization in order to give students the opportunity to deeply develop their literacy and to be able to develop their comprehension, particularly literary informational texts in English. They have to spend time learning how to do those things in English. So it absolutely has impacted the amount of time students have been able to spend learning in Spanish. In order to have another realistic consideration is that in order to have 9 lessons a day that are of the quality that we demand from our teachers now, as opposed to in 1998 or 2000, the amount of investment of time required of a teacher, the amount of skill required of a teacher to do it in one language is extremely high. The amount of skill and energy required to do that, even for half of those lessons, in Spanish is almost unrealistic. And that's kind of just my opinion at this point in time. When you're trying to move students who are at a 50 or 60% proficiency and try to get them to 70 or 80% proficiency. If everybody's pretty proficient and you're not in those kind of accountability structures and everybody has this sort of foundational base, fluency and comprehension and computation, then you have more space in which to operate. So that's the response to that. We have maintained Spanish instruction at the school up through the end of last year. And we have sustained, under all those constraints and all those challenges, we've sustained Spanish in this way. We've offered all the required programming, which is English language development, the 4-hour ELD block for the ELL students. We've offered the required English mainstream program for parents who want mainstream English-only instruction, no Spanish. And we have also offered dual language to students who are they're mainstream kids, basically, and when they qualify for these waivers, their parents want them to learn in Spanish. The way that we have done it is by focusing less on time, less on that 50%, because again, you have to invest time in the English piece that's aligned to the outcomes that we are accountable to. But we've aligned our instruction to the performance objectives. So we look, teachers go through, and this is part of that skill level that I've talked about, go through the essential performance objectives and examine and select certain POs that can be well taught in Spanish. So some examples include things like plot and theme. Those are present in Spanish literary texts, just as they are in English. Characterization and all the aspects of comprehension of text. Those are all transferable, whereas some are more difficult, particular kinds of vocabulary, certain kinds of concepts in math. We don't necessarily have the skills to create in Spanish. So we, using our curriculum documents, selected which POs to integrate and provide Spanish